So today's topic is one of the reasons that we struggle as moms, as women, as human beings. So if you are a mom, a woman, or a human being, this video is for you. And if you're not, I'm not sure why you're on Facebook. So I don't know, maybe there's Facebook for pets. But anyway, I'm really excited to talk with you about this topic because it's one that, like many of the sort of hidden reasons, it's hidden and we're often not conscious of it. And we think that why we really struggle is something outside and something over there with somebody else, be that our child, or be that person our spouse, or that person is our neighbor, whatever it is, we have a sense that that's where the struggle is. And so today what I want to talk with you about is really where one of the struggles is, and it's not external, it's internal. And it may be something that you've realized before. Maybe this will be entirely new to you. Regardless, I would invite you to sit a while with me and just hear what I have to say. And as usual, I am glad to engage in productive conversations. So if you have some comments or questions, I will periodically check in with Facebook and see, what your comments or questions are. So when I was promoting this video, I had a picture of a sort of a close-up of part of a woman's face, and it was a close-up, and I said, looking at yourself, what do you see? And so that's a little hint about this reason why we struggle. And when I say struggle, what I mean specifically is that we have available to us an abundance of joy, ease, love, connection, abundance. They're there and available for us all the time. And so to me, one of the ways I define struggle is when we are disconnected from that and we have that sense of just there's so much effort and we're trying so hard and things aren't working out and things are harder than we think they should be. And we have a sense of sort of not partnership with other people. We have a sense of isolation. We have a sense of really having to do it all ourselves. So that's what I mean by struggle, is there is a natural abundance of the good things available to us. And yet when we feel a disconnection from those good things, and where we have a sense of being really distant from those things, or that they're not accessible to us, then that's what I'm talking about when I say struggle. Now, in family life specifically, I'm talking about those times where it just seems like so much work to be a parent, and our children seem to be taking so much from us. And, there's this sense of just exhaustion. Could it be easier? Could it not be so hard every single minute? That's often what I hear from my clients, is this sense of, could I just get a break? Can't they leave me alone for 2 minutes to go to the bathroom by myself? Or can't my spouse do this for once? So there's just this sense of just huge, my shoulders slump when I think about it, and I want to slump in my chair here for the camera. It's like, it's just so hard. So as I say all that, I'm doing that so you have a picture of what I'm talking about. I'm not saying it to in any way judge you for being in that space, because guess what? We all go there, even me. So we all go there. So it's not a judgment. It's simply a realization and an offering that that's what I'm talking about when I say struggle, is that that's the sense, the energy, what it feels like to be in struggle. And we all go there. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, most of the time we think, and this is a lot of social conditioning, this is the way we were enculturated as children, is that we think that the struggle is out there. So in other words, the reason things are hard and not so fun, and we're not happy, and we're not enjoying family life, and our children are snotty or bratty or, too revved up, whatever we are labeling, that what we're thinking is that that's the problem. Those are the things that are the problem. Now, there are truths to, yes, when we're tired physically and our children are not ready, not willing, not able to go to sleep, there is some truth in that. Interaction itself has stress to it. Okay, so again, there's some reality that, yes, there's some stress there. The struggle is different than the stress. The stress is, yes, there's an actual thing that's happening. Yes, that can be stressful. The struggle is up here. And those of you that watched my videos before, you're like, yeah, she's always talking about this. And here's why. Because it's so important. It's up here. It lives up here, which means partially it's totally imagined. And the good news, it's completely under your control because it only exists up here. It's not real. It's up there in our heads. So that's where the struggle. So we think, again, and this is cultural, we've learned this, that, oh, the problem is out there. If I could just fix those other people, if I could fix those situations, if I could bend them to my will. And I know about this. My husband will tell you, and my daughter too, that under stress, one of the modes, if I'm not conscious, that I go into is control freak, drill sergeant. I try really hard to get things under control. It's an old habit from my childhood, and it did serve me at times, but it doesn't serve me now. And nonetheless, it still happens at times that I just think, oh, okay, if I get that thing out there and bend it to my will, get it to do what I want it to do, then the problem will go away. So I hope some of you are nodding your heads and saying, oh, yes, good, because it's not just me. I know that. Because again, this is what I talk with my clients about. Specifically, though, let me take a drink, and then I specifically want to really hone in on a very specific hidden cause to our struggle. Before I do that, a little sneaky, right? So before I do that, I'm going to tell you part of why this video came up. I recently finished one of my coaching programs, a 3-month long program called Metamorphosis. And during one of the group coaching sessions, one of the things that we did with one of the participants was she was struggling. And what came to me as I was listening to her and coaching her was part of what was going on for her was some really mixed up thinking, which happens to all of us. And so what we did as a group, I think there were 4 of us present at that time, 4 participants, this woman and myself. So actually that's 6. That's me in math. What can I say? So what we did was I invited everyone to acknowledge this woman through their experience, what they had seen and experienced of her during our time as a coaching group. What did they notice about her? And so they gave her acknowledgments, and her role was to sit and hear those acknowledgments. And part of the feedback that I got immediately from her was that was so healing for her, so nourishing, so enriching. And the feedback, and you could see that from her countenance, the way she was as people were giving her this feedback, and she reflected on it afterwards also. The other feedback I got was over time from the other participants, they were like, wow, that was really powerful. And boy, I need that. So I was like, yeah, that's true. We all do need that. And here's what I also know. In my community on Facebook, the Conscious Mom Circle, I recently asked a question about, do you have a tribe? That's the common language that a lot of us use these days is, do you have a tribe? Do you have a support network? And most of the people answered that no, they didn't have a tribe. Some answered, well, I have a bit of one, or I have one virtually a little bit, but I don't have one in real life, or I have a little bit of one in real life, but, only at certain times of year or whatever. And so what we are doing in this modern era is we are isolated in general. So again, there are some exceptions, but by and large, we are isolated, and we don't have the support as parents that it truly takes to thrive for ourselves, for our families. And so because of that, in part, it is a breeding ground for struggle, because we are, in that sense, doing it alone and going it alone. Nonetheless, one of the things that is true for all of us is we have a huge reservoir always available to us that most of us are not in the habit of using or calling on. And that is the reservoir of ourself. And this is going to be sort of the answer and the problem at the same time. So many of us do not talk to ourselves, do not support ourselves, do not listen to ourselves. Let me pause that actually. Many of us do not listen to ourselves regularly. Many of us, if we do listen, we are listening either with a critical ear or somewhat a dismissive energy. I'll talk about that. So that's the listening piece. When we talk to ourselves, similarly, when we talk to ourselves, because we all do, everybody has this habit, is we talk to ourselves in harsh ways, in critical ways, in unloving ways, in untrue ways. And so those pieces, the listening to ourselves and talking to ourselves, that's a big part of it. The third piece, I would say, is caring for ourselves, which is a sort of broader scope to this, but is that idea of, as moms in particular, much of our focus is external. We are the caretakers. We are looking out for, paying attention to, noticing, tending to, nurturing, supporting, stewarding, shepherding, feeding, clothing, bathing, all healing, all those things are externally focused. And while obviously there's huge strength in that is the nurturing part. That is the mother, if you think about it. It's the nurturer, it's the carer for. However, when it's all external, something really crucial is missing. And it's a piece that if it doesn't get tended to, it is going to cause serious damage. And I just did a video series. So if you want to look it up on Facebook, I did a series about people-pleasing moms. And I talked about, what does it mean to be a people pleaser? What are the negative effects of people pleasing on us as the pleasers? And what are the negative impacts that people pleasing actually has on our children, both in their immediate lives, but also as they grow, and what are the messages they're learning as girls and boys, and that they take into the world for themselves. And so I invite you to go check that out, because I'm not going to go into that specific detail today. Today, my focus, I'm getting to it, I promise. Today, my focus is really on this piece of our connection to ourselves and the way we talk to ourselves. So what I notice with every mom I have ever worked with is, if I ask her point blank, which I do, I will say, so tell me, what are 3 of your strengths as a mom? And they will look around and be like, oh, ooh, tough question. They pause. They're like, I have to think about that. And they really do. Some of them will sometimes think, I invite them, what are 3 things? So some of them will find 3 things. Some of them will find them relatively quickly, like, oh, well, yeah, this, or yeah, that. Some of them don't find 3. They might find 2 or 1. Some really, really struggle. And to me, that's indicative of part of this hidden cause of our struggle, is that we don't know how to acknowledge ourselves. And there's lots of reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into in this video, because otherwise I'd be here for all day, and I have some clients to talk to, so I'm not going to go into that. But so we don't acknowledge ourselves, and we also really, besides not acknowledging ourselves, when I ask the flip side question, I say, so tell me 3 of your challenges as a mom, or what are 3 of your weaknesses, the things you're not as good at? Boom, boom, boom. They can come up with them. Almost 100% of the time, that's the way it looks. Self-acknowledgement, really hard to find those things, to say them out loud, to even say them without qualification. So they'll say things like, they'll start to say things acknowledging, like, well, I'm pretty patient. Well, that's most of the time, but sometimes I still do yell. And so it's like they have a hard time making an acknowledgement without having a qualification to say, well, I'm not perfect, and I'm not that good. So even with the acknowledgement, sometimes there's some degradation of it, because it's like, oh, well, it's not, I'm not always like this, which I already know. Of course, you're not always like that. You're a human. I said, what are your strengths? So there's that. And then that flip side is most people can very quickly say, here's 3 things that I suck at, basically. And part of that is that we have very unreasonable expectations for ourselves. We think, and let me rephrase that, we unconsciously think that we should be perfect. So intellectually, like if you have a conversation with a group of moms, they'll say, oh, well, yeah, I know. Yeah, well, not everybody's perfect. And yeah, I'm not going to do all those things. Yet underneath, the self-talk is very critical. So when moms see themselves not doing something that they unconsciously think they should, there's the criticism. There's like, oh, well, I'm not, I'm really must not be a very fun mom, or I'm not a patient mom, or, whatever the criticism is. We are very good at, quick to, and habitually tied to criticizing ourselves. And here's why that leads to our struggle, is we are on our backs and we are not acknowledging ourselves. There's a bunch of reasons why it leads to the struggle. So we're on our backs, we're not acknowledging ourselves, we are holding ourselves to unreasonable standards. And so we are not cultivating a spirit of joy and abundance and happiness and ease. Because internally, we're always like the wicked stepmother with Cinderella, and we're berating ourselves. Well, who's going to be happy when the internal dialogue is continual criticism? Very few people. Very few people flourish under those conditions. In fact, I would say that probably no one flourishes under those conditions. So that is setting ourselves up for an external struggle, because inside we are condemning ourselves. We're not loving ourselves. We're hypercritical of ourselves. We are looking for evidence to show how not good we are, how not okay we are. And so, of course, then when we have the real life situations that are stressful, it's going to be really easy for us to spiral downward and behave in ways that we don't want to. And then that feeds back into the self-criticism. So now it's like, oh, now not only am I not patient, but I just grabbed my kid's arm. What kind of mom am I? So then it just feeds back in and it makes it worse. So that's something that I see as one of those hidden causes that we don't realize, that self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves, is really detrimental to our happiness and our children's happiness, our family's happiness, because it is influencing how we go about our daily life, our parenting experience. So I'm going to pause for a minute and check in over on Facebook and see if there's any comments or questions about what I've shared so far. So that self-talk is really critical. And most of us, again, when we were growing up, we learned some really negative habits around that. We learned things like you shouldn't brag about yourself. You shouldn't, say, oh, yes, I'm so good. So what we do with that then is we don't acknowledge ourselves internally because there is that censor on that nice talking to ourselves. So that's, again, something we just learned. And so we haven't noticed because it's unconscious. It's under our conscious mind's awareness. And it goes on. So we don't even catch it. And it can be really subtle. Sometimes, in fact, I'd say often it's more subtle. Sometimes some of us really do engage in some really mean self-talk. For many others, though, what I notice is that it's a more subtle form. So it could be what I mentioned earlier, where, like, if asked to acknowledge oneself, a mom will say, oh yeah, I'm good at this, but ... So that's that undercutting. So it's like, well, I can say this, but only if I add on some qualifier so I don't sound like I'm too full of myself. So that's a subtle form. It's like, say it. Yeah, I'm good at this. This is one of my strengths. Absolutely. Claim it. Claim it. It's true. Doesn't mean it's true 100% of the time. Again, you're human. It's still true. So that subtle but ... is a way we undercut ourselves. Another subtle way is we'll do things like self-deprecating talk. So we'll say, oh, well, no, I'm too clumsy. We sort of say it in this like offhand, oh, or no, I'm not good at those things. Well, that may not seem critical, and yet it is a way of reinforcing our not enoughness. If you don't want to do something, you can say to yourself, yeah, I don't want to do that. You could say even, boy, that's challenging for me. I sort of get scared about dancing in public, whatever. I'm not good at it. Who knows if you're good at it? Maybe you're not dancing for the stars qualified. I'm not, but I don't care. I'm still a good enough dancer for me. That's what matters. I enjoy it. So being able to start to notice those ways that you undercut your self-esteem, that you lower yourself, that you say you're not enough, you're not lovable enough, you're not worthy enough. Look for those ways that you talk to yourself. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that sometimes we are talking to ourselves silently in our head. So we may just criticize, say, oh, that's stupid. How'd you do that again? Well, that's self-critical talk. That's not helping you. But sometimes we do it even overtly. So we might say something about the way we look. We might say, I'm too fat. Yeah, I've heard moms say that, right? So yes. So if we say that, that's a way of undercutting ourselves. We don't need to say that. That doesn't help us. That doesn't connect us to our source. That doesn't motivate and inspire us. That's not going to help us. And it's going to add when we are feeling bad about ourselves, which is what happens when we are talking to ourselves or about ourselves in critical ways. We are weakening ourselves for those daily stressful moments that we have with our children, with our spouses. So it's really critical to learn to talk to yourself in a more loving way. It's not just mumbo jumbo. It's not psychobabble. It's true. And anybody who tells you that it's mumbo jumbo or psychobabble is someone not to listen to, because they don't have your best interests at heart. And I would say, just as a sort of blanket statement, they are more concerned with themselves and how they feel about themselves than they are about you. So it's not about you, it's about them. So anybody who says, oh, don't do those things, or who cares, it doesn't matter, it does matter. It absolutely matters. It's one of the ways that we feed ourselves and we reinforce what's true in our connection. Here's what I notice, and you probably have noticed this too. Very young children, they love themselves. They're not critical of themselves. Even if they can't talk, you can see, they don't fall down as they're learning to walk and somehow berate themselves like, oh, stupid me. How is it that I fell down? What a klutz I am. What a dummy. They don't do that because they don't have any need to. They know they're not a klutz and a dummy. They're learning to walk. So they get up and they do it again. They just, they might get frustrated as they're learning, but they don't turn it inward on themselves. They're just like, oh yeah, I really want to know how to do this. So as children grow though, what I often see, and I'm sure you've seen, and this to me is, well, I'll share what it is to me in just a minute. Sorry, I get so excited. As they grow, what you'll often see is self-critical talk and self-critical ways of being with themselves start to develop. And for me personally, this is something that I find really heartbreaking and really troubling, because to me, one of the things that happens for them is when they don't feel good about themselves, then they look for compensating ways to feel good about themselves. And some of the ways that we teach about in our culture is to develop superior attitudes. So we think, I'm good, that person who's different than me. So it might be a different skin color, a different language, living in a different part of town, going into a different school, having a different gender that they're attracted to than you think they should. All these things that we can see as, oh, that's different than me. Children then are sort of primed to want to feel better about themselves by making somebody else seem less good. And so it's a breeding ground for bullying and division between people. So it doesn't serve our children, not only for their own esteem, but for relationships in the world, because part of the way then they, again, get themselves to feel better when they're believing a lot of critical things. A compensating way to do that then is to do something that all of a sudden you can think, oh, well, I'm better than that person. At least I don't this and that. And that's rampant with we adults. So we see it even as we look out at other parents, right? So we see a parent having a bad parenting moment. Sometimes when we're feeling wobbly about who we are, the way we tend to view that is, thank goodness I don't do that. What a loser that person is. Or, oh my gosh, somebody should take that child away from the parent, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that we can't have discernment and say, boy, that is not a good situation going on. But that when we really get into the judgment piece and we say, I know who that person is and they're not a good person, so on and so forth, we're not in alignment anymore, because that is something we can't know. We're seeing them one snapshot at a time. And I can tell you personally, even though I'm a parent coach, there are times that if you saw me with my daughter, you'd say, oh, I wouldn't listen to her. Yeah, because you know what? Sometimes I'm really off track. I'm human. And sometimes I really get stuck in my stuff and I don't notice it. And I behave out of that space in ways that aren't loving. So you can't judge a person by one interaction. And yet we do that as parents. When we're not feeling solid, it's much easier to judge other parents than to have empathy and compassion for them. When we feel really solid, when we're like, yeah, it doesn't mean I have to think I'm perfect. It means I feel really solid in who I am. I know my strengths. I know the things that I'm not as strong at. I don't have a need to look at somebody else and say, well, I'm better than them, or, ooh, they're better than me and I better, work harder so I'll be as good as them. It doesn't matter. I don't have a need to compare myself. And that in and of itself is a source for more joy. When we don't go around comparing ourselves, we have more ease about our lives. things just are smoother. They flow more easily. So we end up leaking a lot of energy that we get up with each day in these ways because we are not talking to ourselves in a kind way. We're too demanding with ourselves. We're hypercritical. So those are all habits that you're doing to some degree or another because you're a human being. And I've never met somebody, I've not met the Dalai Lama. So maybe the Dalai Lama is really good at this. And maybe there's some other, spiritual people, Thich Nhat Hanh and others who have moved beyond this in their human evolution. Every other human that I've met and talked to at length or at detail, this is a struggle for all of us. So I want to invite you to really pay attention to, over the next several days, pay attention to how you're talking about yourself, how you're talking about yourself to yourself, how you're talking about yourself to others. Another way you can get clued in to how you think about yourself is to notice how you respond to complimentary things that other people say and how you respond to criticism that other people have or what you perceive as criticism. So I can tell you from my own personal experience, for instance, that when I am feeling a bit wobbly, I very much take criticism as almost a personal attack, even if it's not meant that way, even if it's more of like a generic feedback, like, hey, I noticed this. There is a part of me that's like, I've got to fight back against it because it is poking something that I'm already, really feeling tender about. And so if I am feeling very triggered by what I perceive as other people's critical feedback to me, usually what's going on underneath is I'm giving myself a lot of critical feedback and I'm not appreciating myself and loving myself. So they're like a mirror for me. So I can project and go, it's them, that, SOB, why'd they say that to me? But really what it is that's what I'm telling myself underneath. So it pokes at it for me. On the compliment side, what happens for a lot of people is there is an immediate, some kind of cutoff or deflection of a compliment. So if other people say something acknowledging, there is a very quick reaction for us when we don't feel comfortable with ourselves is we've got to, oh no, that's nothing. Oh, no big deal. Anybody would have done it. It's like, no. So we cut that off and we don't take it in. So it's like somebody saying in a way, I love you. I see this in you. This is inspiring to me. And we say, no, it's not. Stop that. Don't let it in. So we're being given a gift there and we're saying, I'm not going to receive it. I'm not going to take it in. And I don't want you to do that to yourselves. So here's my way we're going to end this. And so stick with it. If you just joined, stick with it. And if you're like, who is this person? I'll say it. So, I'm Shadi Lavender. I'm the Conscious Moms Coach. But here's what I want you to stick around for. No matter if you're a mom, basically if you're human and you've somehow this is showing up for you right now, stick with me. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to take a drink first, and I'll check Facebook too. So hold on just 1 second. I'm going to check Facebook, see if there are any comments or questions, and then we're going to end with a little exercise. All right. Let me pause, and I'm going to really center myself before we do this. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I invite you to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to be the voice of truth, the voice of higher consciousness. It can be the voice of God. I'm not saying I am God. So I'm going to be that voice. I'm going to channel this for you. And what I want for you, if you're willing, is to simply hear what I'm going to say in a minute and let it in. Or you might repeat it to yourself. Just really allow this to come in. And if you notice some part of your voice, your own voice says, oh, no, that can't be true, or that's not me. Just, you don't have to fight it. Just, okay, yes, I heard you. Now back to the higher consciousness voice. Okay. So here we go. And some things you may say, it doesn't apply to me. is still true, okay? You are lovable. You are worthy. You are whole. You are perfect, exactly as you are. I see you working so hard. I know you're giving this your best effort. I know your intention is to be loving and kind and generous. I see you persisting even when things get challenging. I see you trying again when the last time you did it, maybe it didn't turn out so well. You are lovable, no matter what. You are perfect, exactly as you are, even when you're not perfect. We need you. We are grateful for you. You bring so many blessings to us simply by being you. We forgive you. We love you no matter what. We love you exactly as you are. We are grateful for your presence in our lives. And now to close out, I'd like to invite you to do one last thing, to put a hand on or near your heart, or not your real heart, on your chest above your heart. It's always a weird thing to say, isn't it? And now I'm going to say a few things in the first person. So I'm going to say I. And I want you to repeat after me. And when you say I, of course, you're talking to yourself. Okay? I am lovable. I am lovable. I am lovable. I am worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy. I am whole. I am whole. I am whole. I am perfect exactly as I am. I am perfect exactly as I am. I am perfect exactly as I am. I can be gentle with myself. I can be loving with myself. I can sing my own praises. I can love me right now. I can love me no matter what. I will love me no matter what. I will love myself right now. I will be gentle and kind and loving with myself. Thank you for sharing this time with me today. Thank you for opening yourself up to this message, and thank you for taking in those true words about yourself. It's been my honor to spend this time with you. If you want to connect with me further, you can find me on Facebook in the Conscious Mom Circle, which I believe there's a link included, so feel free to join. You can also find me on Facebook at Shawnee Lavender Coaching. And I have a YouTube channel as well, which is at YouTube, and that's Shawnee Lavender as well. So again, my name is Shawnee Lavender, obviously. I am the Conscious Moms Coach, and thank you so much for this time today. And if you have comments or questions after you've watched the video, even after it's not live anymore, feel free to post those. And if this has resonated with you, I am always glad to have you share it with others in your life that you care about and think would enjoy hearing what I had to say. Thanks. Have a great day.